The story begins at a prestigious all-boys boarding school, nestled deep in the snowy landscapes of New England, far away from the bustling city. It's December, and the cold is biting. The campus is home to many students who live and study there full-time. Among the faculty is a teacher named Paul Honham. Interestingly, Paul himself was once a student at this very school. He was exceptionally bright and earned a scholarship because of his academic excellence. Despite his intelligence, Paul isn't well liked. His strict demeanor and stubborn nature make him unpopular among both students and staff. Even the current headmaster used to be one of Paul's students back in the day. One day, the headmaster calls Paul into his office with a serious concern. He informs Paul that he failed the son of a senator, someone whose family is a major donor to the school. Because of Paul's decision, the student couldn't secure admission to Princeton University. But Paul remains unfazed. He refuses to pass students who don't deserve it, no matter the consequences. For him, the integrity of the school matters more than appeasing influential families. This stance angers the headmaster. As a form of punishment, the headmaster assigns Paul a responsibility. During the upcoming Christmas break, he must supervise the handful of students who won't be going home, those who will be holding over on campus. Paul has no choice but to accept the task. Among these students is Angus, a rebellious teenager known for stirring trouble. He's eagerly looking forward to spending the holidays with his mother in St. Kitts and is visibly excited about the trip. Meanwhile, the rest of the students and faculty gather in the chapel for a solemn moment. They pay tribute to the son of the cafeteria manager, who was once a student at the school himself. Tragically, he lost his life serving in the Vietnam War. The next day, all the students gather in Paul's classroom, where he announces their grades. Most of them receive disappointing marks, except for Angus. He earns a B+, which stands out as the highest among his peers. Soon, the Christmas break begins, and parents arrive to pick up their children. Angus waits eagerly for his mother, hoping to leave for the holidays. But she doesn't show up. Concerned, he calls her, only to hear something unexpected. She's heading off on a honeymoon with her new husband, a trip she had postponed earlier. Angus had pleaded with her not to remarry so soon. He simply wanted to spend time with her during the holidays. But now his plans are shattered. With no one to take him home, he's forced to stay back at the school as one of the holdovers. Alongside Angus, 4 other students remain behind, and Paul is assigned to supervise them. He creates a strict schedule for the group, filled with early morning exercises and disciplined study sessions. There's little room for flexibility, and the boys don't bond well with each other. One night, we see a student named June, who's from Korea, quietly crying on his bed. Being so far from his family weighs heavily on him. Angus notices and gently offers comfort, showing a rare moment of empathy. 6 days pass in this rigid routine. Then, the father of one of the students arrives. He's extremely wealthy and lands in a helicopter. He invites all 5 boys to join his family on a holiday trip, but only if they get permission from their parents. Everyone manages to get approval, except Angus. He's unable to reach his mother, leaving him behind once again. Now, only Paul, the cafeteria manager, and Angus remain in the vast, empty boarding school. Frustrated and angry, Angus sneaks Paul's keys and roams the school at night. He even helps himself to ice cream from the kitchen, breaking the rules. After wandering through the cold halls, he ends up sitting alone in the chapel the next morning. The cafeteria manager finds him there and prepares breakfast for both of them. Paul soon joins them. Angus asks if he can go to the gym, but Paul firmly refuses, reminding him that he's responsible for his safety and can't allow unsupervised activities. Upset by the rejection, Angus storms out and tries to book a hotel room over the phone. He's desperate to escape. But Paul overhears the conversation and immediately hangs up the call. Angus, overwhelmed with frustration, suddenly bolts from the school building. Paul tries to stop him, but Angus refuses to listen. He rushes into the gym and attempts a risky move, only to jam himself in a tight spot and fall hard, dislocating his shoulder in the process. Paul immediately takes him to the hospital, where the doctors reset his shoulder. When asked how the injury happened, Angus lies and says he slipped at a restaurant. He knows that if he admits it happened in the gym, Paul would be held responsible for allowing a student inside without supervision during the holiday break. If the headmaster found out, Paul could lose his job. So Angus chooses to protect him by hiding the truth. Later, Paul takes Angus out to a restaurant for a change of scenery. While they're eating, a waitress approaches them. She turns out to be the headmaster's assistant, working part-time during the holidays. Paul tries to charm her, and she warmly invites both of them to a Christmas party at her home. Paul is eager to go. It's been ages since he stepped outside the confines of the boarding school. So he, Angus, the cafeteria manager, and the school's generator technician all head to her house for the celebration. At the party, Angus meets the assistant's niece, and he's instantly drawn to her. He offers to help with her tasks, and the two eventually head down to the basement. There, Angus flirts with her, and they share a kiss. On the other hand, Paul soon discovers that her assistant already has a boyfriend. His heart sinks. He had come hoping for a genuine connection, only to feel rejected and hurt. Meanwhile, the cafeteria manager drinks heavily and becomes emotional. Memories of her son, who died in the Vietnam War, come flooding back. Paul and Angus gently escort her outside to help her calm down. In that quiet moment, Paul tells Angus he had expected his father to show up and take him home today, hoping that would finally end his holiday duty. But this leads to a heated exchange. Angus, visibly upset, reveals that his father passed away long ago. He doesn't consider his stepfather as family, and that pain runs deep. The cafeteria manager overhears this and is clearly disturbed by Angus's harsh attitude. She scolds him for his behavior, reminding him of the importance of empathy and respect. After the emotional evening, the group returns to the boarding school, carrying with them the weight of unresolved feelings and quiet reflections. The following morning, Paul begins to reflect on his behavior during the last night and realizes he could have handled things differently. Wanting to make amends, he organizes a small holiday gathering and invites Angus and the cafeteria manager. During the celebration, he offers them gifts and tells them they can ask for anything they'd like. Angus, without hesitation, says he wants to visit Boston. Paul immediately refuses, explaining that it goes against school policy. But the cafeteria manager gently reminds him of the promise he made to Angus. She even offers to accompany them, mentioning that her sister, who's expecting a baby, lives along the way. She plans to stop there and return with Paul afterward. For the first time, Paul agrees to bend the rules and take Angus to Boston. He knows Angus can be mischievous and often disregards boundaries, but something has changed. Paul is beginning to understand him. He recognizes Angus's intelligence. After all, he was the only student who passed the recent test. Paul also sees the emotional turmoil Angus carries, shaped by deep family issues. So the three of them set off together. Along the way, the cafeteria manager gets off at her sister's home, leaving Paul and Angus to continue the journey. Once in Boston, the two explore the city together. They go ice skating, visit museums, and enjoy various activities. Angus even jokes around with Paul, and a genuine bond starts to form between them. During their stay, Paul finds a bottle of anxiety medication in Angus's room, the same kind he takes himself. It's a quiet revelation. Both of them are battling similar inner struggles, and they've unknowingly turned to the same remedy for comfort. Later, Paul runs into a successful student from Harvard University. When asked about his own career, Paul fabricates a story, hiding the truth. Angus plays along, sensing Paul's discomfort. The truth is, Paul doesn't want to admit that he never achieved the kind of success he once dreamed of. He's just a teacher now, though he once had the potential for much more. Eventually, Angus learns the real story. Paul confides in him, revealing that during his time at Harvard, a donor's son accused him of stealing academic work. In a moment of rage, Paul hit him with a car. That incident led to his expulsion and the collapse of his entire career. The only person who offered him a lifeline was the headmaster, once his own student, who gave him a teaching job at the boarding school. Through this heartfelt confession, we begin to understand Paul's pain. He could have become someone remarkable, but one mistake changed everything. Now, he's determined to ensure Angus doesn't follow the same path. Because beneath the troublemaker's exterior, Paul sees a brilliant mind worth protecting. The next day, Paul and Angus head to the theater to catch a movie. But midway through the film, Angus quietly slips out. Paul notices his absence and rushes outside to find him. Just as Angus is about to get into a taxi, Paul spots him and asks where he's going. Angus replies that he's going to see his father. Paul assumes he's headed to a cemetery to visit his father's grave and offers to accompany him. But Angus surprises him. He takes Paul to a psychiatric hospital. His father is still alive, but mentally unwell, and has been living there for some time. Angus believes his father might be doing better now. He shares everything about his life, hoping for a meaningful connection. But as they talk, it becomes painfully clear that his father's condition hasn't improved. Angus is deeply disappointed. It's another emotional blow in a life already filled with quiet battles. That evening, while having dinner with Paul, Angus opens up further. He confesses his fear that one day he might end up like his father, struggling with the same mental health issues. He wonders if that's why his mother keeps her distance. Paul listens carefully and disagrees. He tells Angus that while he may be mischievous, he's also incredibly intelligent. He assures him that his future holds great promise. Hearing this gives Angus a sense of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. Soon, the holiday break comes to an end. Paul, Angus, and the cafeteria manager return to the boarding school. On January 1st, the school reopens and students begin to arrive. Angus reconnects with his classmates, and it's clear he's changed. Though he didn't go home for Christmas, his time with Paul taught him valuable lessons. Later, the headmaster calls Paul into his office. Angus's mother and stepfather are already there. They've learned that Angus visited his father at the psychiatric hospital, something he wasn't permitted to do. They now want to withdraw him from the school and send him to a military academy. The headmaster agrees, citing rule violations. But Paul refuses to let that happen. He remembers how one mistake ruined his own career, and he's determined not to let Angus suffer the same fate. So he takes the blame. He tells the headmaster that the trip to Boston was his idea and that he encouraged Angus to visit his father. Hearing this, the headmaster decides Angus can stay, but Paul must leave. He's dismissed from his job. Before leaving, Paul visits the cafeteria manager, who gives him a diary. She knows he's always wanted to write a book, and this is her way of encouraging him to start. Paul then meets Angus one last time. Angus understands the magnitude of Paul's sacrifice. Paul had no one to guide him when his own career fell apart, but he chose to be that person for Angus. As Paul drives away, he carries a bottle of expensive liquor, stolen from the headmaster's office. He takes a sip, then spits it out, a symbolic gesture of defiance. Whether he followed the rules or broke them, people always stood against him. But now he doesn't care. He did something for Angus that no one ever did for him, and he truly believes Angus will go on to achieve great things in life. And that was the journey of the Holdovers, a story not just about a teacher and a student, but about two broken souls who find healing in each other's company. In a world that often forgets the quiet ones, Paul and Angus remind us that sometimes the greatest acts of love come from those who've lost the most. If this story touched your heart, even for a moment, then it's done what it was meant to do. Because life isn't just about rules and reputations. It's about the courage to stand up for someone when no one else will. Thank you for staying with us till the end. If you felt the emotions, the silence, the warmth, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back soon with another story that speaks to your soul.